I wholeheartedly welcome everyone to this INBAC Day event. And I'm Rajesh Adangale. I'm moderator for this panel discussion of decoding building automation industry here in India. Thing is that building automation, as we know, it is a very complex subject. It is not as straightforward the task as we do in industrial automation. It is a little bit complex because the fabric of building automation, it has got different threads. Every thread has got its own characteristics, its own strength, its own weakness. And finally, it is up to us how we view all these threads together and form a fabric or the end result. So as I mentioned, fabric is the building automation industry, and various threads are the stakeholders in the building automation who are working to make the project successful. So who are these stakeholders? So we are all the stakeholders, but we belong to different categories. Like somebody is from representing the customer, someone is end user, system integrator, OEM, consultant. So we all come together and we strive to deliver the project, the end result, which was thought about by the customer on day one. And it is not a simple task to bring everyone together, and unless we bring all the stakeholders together, it is not possible to decode the building automation industry here in India. So as an INBAC, we were able to successfully invite and bring all the stakeholders together. So we have customer representative with us, we have system integrator, we have OEMs, and we also have consultant in this particular forum. So I'm really honored to introduce these stalwarts who are here today for this panel discussion. And I would like to start with Mr. Ashwin Izankar. He is a principal consultant, Epsilon Design Consultancy Private Limited, and is highly experienced consultant with over 30 years of experience, and has worked with leading companies in India such as Thermax Limited in process, heat and cooling, water treatment and HVAC systems, and then later on with the system integrators for fire security and building management and automation systems. I welcome Mr. Vaibhav Pitre. He is the Managing Director, India and Southwest Asia, Belimo Automation India Private Limited. He has overall work experience of more than 20 years. During the early years of his career, Vaibhav has led installation and commissioning projects and later moved to product management function. He has in-depth experience in customer relationship management, sales, process effectiveness, product management, and pricing strategies. I would also like to invite Mr. Vikas Gandhi. Yeah, Vikas is the director of TechBean Systems Private Limited, a company that works in the domain of building automation, telecom, and engineering services. He has about 28 years of experience in steam engineering, industrial automation, and building automation. Prior to founding TechBean, he worked as the general manager exports with Phenolics Cables Limited, where he established new markets and opportunities in the Middle East. And finally, I would like to welcome Mr. G.S. Balaji. He is industrial veteran and executive director, projects DLF. He is a civil engineer and alumni of Bangalore University and has worked on various engineering projects in Middle East and in real estate sector. He is a regular author in Construction Trade Magazine Technologies also. So I welcome everyone on this podium, and let us start with our panel discussion. Yeah. So as I mentioned, whenever we talk about a building automation project always begins with the idea that comes into mind of a end user and customer. And then this idea is discussed with consultant and then is taken forward. So my first question will be to Mr. Balaji, and I would like to ask him, building automation industry, as we all know, is not an organized sector. And there is always a gap in knowledge and facts. So it is really difficult to pass on, to communicate the design criteria effectively to different stakeholders. So Mr. Balaji, whenever you executed any projects, how did you ensure that the communication flow was very much clear to the other stakeholders?
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. The main challenge that we always had was to set a datum for whatever we wanted. Our expectations had to be clear. Our results that we wanted from this particular system or the automation implementation had to be clear. As you know, from the real estate industry, today the building automation is a very integral part of any real estate, whether it is residential, commercial, or any type of real estate that you build. Automation plays a very important role, because not only from the predictive analysis that this automation can give us, there is a lot of economic factors that we look at. One is we see the reduction in the operating costs that we are interested in. We are interested in having the optimum capex cost and then the recurring maintenance cost. So this particular automation platform that we put up in any real estate industry has to be properly communicated to the various stakeholders like consultants and end users. It is the end user who, let's call it the facility managers, they come out with their requirements and saying that what better they can do from the previous building that we constructed and handed over to them. So that is where the whole information comes in. That particularly is put into a particular way of order and explained to the consultant who starts building the architecture around it. So we ensured that everybody understood our objective. Everybody knows that this particular thing is going to be an integral part of the building and it is going to run for a long time. So this message has to be very clear for us. And then the owners have to support, and they should understand the benefits that they are going to have in the life cycle of this building if this automation platform is set up. Once this is done, life becomes a little easy for us.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Very nicely put forward, sir. So next in the line will always be a consultant, because the communication from end user, the information from end user will always come to the consultant, and he is the one who has to design the system as per customer's requirement. Initially, it was like customer was okay with working BMS, chalta tha. But now, due to the advent of latest technology, customer has also started to demand a solution which will be a cost effective to them even in the longer run. So it need to have energy saving features into it, and then it should predict wear and tear and analysis and all these functionalities customer has started to demand. So expectations are very high. So how do you try to match these expectations of the customer?
Yes, you're very right, Rajesh. The vanilla flavor BMS is no more, especially with learned developers, that is not the case. Now people are asking more simply because data has become the new oil of our generation. And how much you can put this data to use really defines, the quality of the deployment, BMS deployment that you're doing. So, so you're right. You're absolutely right that the new age customers are asking for more, and the consultants will have to design to ensure that they meet the expectations of that particular project. Uh, so there is a lot of expectancy now. We don't want to just see the visualization of the data. Rather, we want to utilize the data to come out with certain actionable intelligence. So we saw some examples in Mr. Martin's presentation in the morning, but more and more use of a layer on top of the standard building automation, which dive into that SQL database, pulls up data, and comes up with information related to, say, predictive analysis in terms of maintenance, in terms of energy analytics, and ensuring that the building runs at the most optimum level. Uh, I think that is what even the speaker was saying just a minute ago, that they want to have more actionable data. So yes, the tenders of today are not just plain simple tenders. There is something what we call as FMS, Facility Management Suite, that goes by default into most of the tenders. This starts from asset tagging, asset management, documentation management, maintenance management, automated generation of work orders for maintenance, which ties back to the various sensors and the information that we are pulling out of the site, getting actioned upon by the FMS software. So first and foremost, the consultant needs to be educated about it. I think a very valid statement made today morning by Mr. Martin was that some of the consultants are perhaps not up to speed on what is the most you know uh, latest technology that is available, or the cutthroat or the cutting edge solutions that are available. So the consultant needs to be first uh, be aware, and that's where perhaps the OEM consultant interface is very important. OEMs need to make the effort to reach out to consultants to ensure that their technologies are heard and understood by the specifiers, and the specifiers most importantly keep to need an open mind to accept that what they thought was cutting edge may really not be the cutting edge, right? So there has to be a give and take of ideas on both the sides, and ensure that the tender that really gets prepared is able to deliver something more than the vanilla flavor BMS that used to be delivered earlier.
Very nicely said. So now customer expectations are clear. Now has also proceeded, and now he is into product selection phase. So as a OEM, Vaibhav, the question comes to you is generally I also belong from the OEM industry, so I know all our equipments are generally made in US or in Europe, and mostly this technology is suiting to their requirement. So how do you bring this technology to India, and how do you communicate the features in the correct way to the end user and to the consultant? What is the process?
Yeah, so thank you. I think it's a very interesting question, right? So we have an expectation from a developer, and then based on that, the consultant prepares a tender based on the specifications, right? But we also need to understand that the expectation of the end user of a Hiranandani or a DLF is changing. It's a very dynamic environment, right? what has brought us here is not going to take us where we want to go. For example, the products that we have developed now, maybe by the time they actually come into tender, it can be obsolete, right? So it's very important for OEMs to anticipate the future. And what I can see is, just to take a thread from Mr. Martin's presentation, there are two macroeconomic elements which are driving the entire growth worldwide, right? And what we want to have is clean water, clean air. That's sustainability for me. The other important aspect is the efficiently. We want clean water and clean air, but we want to in the most efficient way. And that is where we as an OEM focus aligned to sustainability. So we keep sustainability in mind. The second important aspect is bottom-up feedback. So what does the developer wants today, or what does a consultant wants today to make a state-of-the-art building? So that is bottom-up feedback. And whoever has worked for a product company will understand there is something called as product management cycle, right? So you go to the market to understand the requirements of the market, you understand the macroeconomic terms, and then you give this inputs to a centralized team. And it doesn't matter whether team is in India or in abroad. They need to take into consideration the local code requirements. This all gets into a process of defining the product for the future, right? Now, although the product can be made or designed in Europe or US, but if you have to sell the product in India, then it has to meet the local codes, right? And that is what every organization, every product company, every OEM does from their perspective. Now, once you have developed the product, and obviously there can be some companies who are, I would not say innovation. They're innovision. That means they even vision the future. Now, in that case, it becomes a challenge to convince the consultant and the end user that why your product is better. And that's where I think we all understand there's only one way. It's education. Education through these forums. The reason an experience center is built by an organization is for that reason, to get the industry stalwarts, to show them what works and what doesn't work, and to spread this awareness. It's a long cycle, but somebody has to start it, right? The future of us, needs to know what is BACnet, needs to know the HVAC industry, and they have to be educated. So you also start at the university level in terms of educating them, because these people are going to come into the next professional community, right? And that's where how the OEMs focus, right? And put in the investment and the resources.
Very nicely said, Vaibhav. Education and awareness, and this is exactly what, as an INBAC, we are also trying to do. So now the question comes to a system integrator. System integrator is always supposed to be a main lead of the project, or a hero actually of a film. I'll put it in that way. There are so many system integrators and they will agree to this. And he is the one who shoulders the responsibility till the end. He carries that responsibility, and if something goes wrong, it is always the system integrator who is blamed. So how do you do this, and how do you ensure that your journey from doesn't turn from hero to villainish stage?
Well, it's very nice to hear when you draw an analogy between the SI and a hero, but probably you mean the hero of more of a art film types, the one who has to really work hard to find his way through, So, but yeah, you have a valid point, and especially because the BMS system integrator is the one who exits the site last. He's the last one to move out. When the building is almost ready, it's ready for operation and everything, and you will always find the BMS person still completing his commissioning part and all. So it's very easy for SI to find himself on the wrong side. So he has to be really careful, and as a SI, I would say two most important things that he needs to keep in mind. One is the sound engineering practices they need to follow. And second is the awareness or sensitivity to the presence of many third-party systems. BMS, as we all talked about and agree that BMS is a system which is, is the solution is derived based on what is in the minds of the end user, or what do they dream of, what do they want, and the consultant. And all these expectations, are passed on to the system integrator. Unless a BMS is not successful, unless all these expectations are actually delivered on the field, right? So how do you translate all these expectations into an implementable plan? So that's where a proper engineering needs to be done for every system. So because typically from the pre-sale stage till the BMS vendor is on board, many things have changed. So what information he has at the beginning, a lot of things have changed. They evolve as the project progresses. So to capture all this information properly and mapping that into an implementable plan is extremely critical. And the other part is the third-party systems. BMS in itself is nothing. BMS is taking or interacting with so many other systems. Like Martin showed on his one of his slides, almost 20, 30 odd systems were there which were talking to each other or which were talking to a central system. It's always a big challenge, to get the information from all these systems, to ensure that the systems are really compatible, they're capable of exchanging data with the BMS system. So SI has to be really aware and be sensitive to the all these systems that are there, and try and align as early as possible in the early stages. Of course, with the help of the end user. But if you align well with these, then your chances of making BMS a success are good.
Well said, Vikas. Yeah.
Okay, guys, we have raised these smileys and thumbs up on these tables. So whenever you like or you want to smile or something, you can give feedbacks to our panelists as well. Okay, sir, continue.
Yeah. So we all know that project generally doesn't go in the way it was planned. And mainly the problem in the long running project is that cost estimations generally goes wrong during project execution stage. And it can be due to project delays, material availability issues, or even project management issues. So end user, system installer, and OEM commercially suffer due to this. So my question is to you, Mr. Balaji. What steps do you feel should be taken in advance to overcome this problem? Cost estimation, I'm saying.
See, I can understand the cost going up in terms of manpower and the cost that comes with the delay in implementation. But one thing I can be very sure is that the cost of devices and the products are not going to go high because they are going to reduce over the period of time. The major challenge that we see is that the unforeseen that starts coming into the implementation stage. I'll just give you an example from where he said as a system integrator, there needs to be a check and balance, or if I would call it, an audit done at every stage before when the documents start moving towards implementation stage. I'll give you a certain example. When you are taking all third-party devices, third-party equipments, and integrating them to make the system work as one, many of them are not going to talk to each other because of their own protocols that are there. I have come across situations where we have equipment from a vendor A and we have an equipment from vendor B, and when it has to speak to each other or pick up data, we see that we need converters. So the system integrator at that time says, sir, this does not have that capability to talk to the system protocol that you have put in, so we need to have converters in the middle. So these kind of challenges do come in for us. Second, some of the equipments that we buy do not have the capability of transmitting data to wherever we want it to go. So again, a lot of these unforeseen devices have to be brought in, converters have to be brought in, which in fact adds, it may not be a big cost, but it's an irritant at in the whole process. So I would say that once the architecture is finalized, the battery limits of the architecture, the devices that are being put in, the system that is being designed, all need to be made into a seamless system by the system integrator, and there should be a final audit done saying that, okay, this system, these devices, this protocol, this architecture is fine to go. Till that stage, if you start doing the implementation, then the problems during implementation are visible. If you do this check and balance and do the audit finally before the implementation happens, then I think you will not have cost overruns. And the system integrator exactly knows what all are going to go in, and he can price it properly. And then there won't be any hiccups during the implementation and the delivery.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Balaji. You spoke about the seamless communication. So again, the question rolls back to consultant because he is the one who has to ensure seamless communication not only between the protocols but also between the various stakeholders. There is a lot of expectation from the consultant not only for correct design but also he has to coordinate with everyone. So how difficult this task is and how do you manage all these things?
Well, yes, you're right that the consultant is has to play a key role in this entire process. Uh, Actually, this is a this is an answer that will take a little bit of time. So I'm borrowing a little bit of extra time on this question because perhaps I just wanted to reach out to the industry, you know, to 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 talk a little bit about the problem that we are facing
Yes,
associated
I
with
correlate with you, sir.
this. Yeah. So, yeah, you're right that many a times it is the consultant who plays a key role all through the process, and sometimes is at the receiving end of the brickbats at the end of the project. In fact, I find many a times we are at the we are receiving brickbats at the end of the project because some stakeholder goofed up somewhere, right? So, since you asked the question, how do you manage this? I can tell you how we manage this on the design front. On the design front, we try to create as watertight a spec and the document that goes out from the consultant's office needs to be very watered. And how do you achieve this is basically by having a more involved design, which means that the three O's that I always love to talk of, the owner, the occupier, and the operator, all the three needs to be kept in mind while designing. They need to be actively, there has to be an active discussion with all these three important stakeholders when the tender is being formalized. The data point summary, which is the Bible for the system integrator, has to be as elaborate as possible. So it's not just a bunch of IOs thrown in there, but it has got to have what needs to be mapped, what needs to be set as an alarm, what should be the alarm limits, minimum limit, maximum limit should be there on the IO summary. The field level instrumentation, how many numbers, what is the interface matrix, in the sense who's going to give the cabling for that instrumentation, who's going to provide that instrumentation has to be defined on that IO summary. Once you create a document of this nature, it really becomes a foolproof document. Second is that the tender spec needs to be suited for that particular project. It cannot be a cut, copy, paste project. Just an anecdote here, I found that very recently, 2 days ago, a Bhubaneswar project had a cause and effect matrix done by a consultant based out of Delhi with an epsilon logo. I don't know how this happened, but just trying to tell you that this is the level of cut, copy, paste that happens in our industry. It's pretty bad. So yes, the spec has to be correct, spec has to be perfect. The consultant needs to sit with the three stakeholders, that is the operator, owner, and the occupier, and discuss about new technologies, the conversions of IT, OT, and AT needs to be explained, and see if there is a possibility of getting this convergence and a value add to be done to that particular project. It's only then the project can be differentiated from other projects. And mind you that every project can be a project that, for example, we are doing a project, let's say for example data centers, which Mr. Martin talked of in the morning. We are trying to develop a landing page for a data center end customer who has got, let's say, about 5 to 6 servers only, server racks only in the co-location data center. But when he clicks and he has a landing page wherein he comes to know what is the temperature that is there for his servers, what is the humidity that he is seeing on his servers. He gets to know about the level of obscuration levels that he is seeing, because there's an integration that is happening with Vesda. So let's look at this. Now we are talking of power, which means that I'm doing integration with the switches, pulling out data on the SNMP platform and telling him how much are his servers consuming. I'm giving him idea of what is the temperature. I'm giving idea of the humidity in his cage. I'm giving an idea of access control and CCTV information, in the sense who has accessed that server racks. So it's a complete integration of IT, OT and AT that happens in these kind of environments. Similarly, we are doing a project right now wherein it's a medical equipment company, and there are test benches wherein these equipments that come in from the field for repairs. So there is an operating technology already available, because there are softwares, algorithms which tell those engineers what is going wrong with that particular product. But it is all driven on IT. There is a productivity software which monitors how much time is the engineer spending on the table, based on which the productivity gets captured. And then there is an automation technology, because depending upon the various temperatures at which that equipment needs to be tested, we are putting in algorithms to decide that if the temperature requirement, let's say 15 degrees Celsius ambient, then a low temperature DX system needs to kick in. If the temperature requirement is comfort conditional, then a standard chilled water AHU comes in. So all that algorithm of starting, stopping this. So IT, OT, AT has to be converged and discussed with the customer. And once you reach a sign off, a DBR, a design basis report has to be prepared, which has to be signed off by all stakeholders. It remains a live document throughout the project. So any changes done, you should incorporate into the DBR. At the end of the project, you should be able to give an as-built DBR to the customer, just like an SI gives an as-built drawing to the customer. So this is the way in which you can make a very airtight or a watertight, design. But there are, as I said, this is ideal. This is how it should happen. It doesn't happen in this way. Similarly, on the execution front, there are a lot of challenges that we see. One of the largest challenge is the value add that SIs try to make into this already watertight design specification. They bring in value adds, and most of the times the value adds that I see are nothing else but change of makes, trying to bring down the cost. And the SIs get into what is called as a CTCC exercise, cut throat, cut corner exercise, okay, which is damning for the entire industry. Believe me, I'm speaking from my heart. In this process, nobody makes money. SIs cut corners. I mean, they first take a job at loss. They are not able to pay the OEMs. They are not able to give good salaries to their own engineers. They are not able to have a seeding fund to grow a fresh new engineer from the, fresh out of college. They don't have the funds to do that. They are not able to pay to the OEM, so the OEM does not have the time, effort, money to develop a new product for the Indian market or the market that they're trying to sell into. Who's getting benefited out of this? Nobody. This is a very bad malaise that is afflicting our industry. I don't have an answer to this, but all the big wigs are here. Maybe if you can pay a little bit of attention to this problem that we are facing in the industry, this will really help the industry as such. Until such time this ecosphere of problems exists between the design and the execution issues, yes, to a large extent the consultants will shoulder the blame. The SI may turn out to be the villain, not necessarily the hero. I find most of the time that they are villains, not the heroes. So yes, there is this problem that we all need to acknowledge, and maybe INBAC can push thought process, in directions to ensure that everybody is, in the correct frame of finances for their respective business, whether it is OEM, whether it is SI, whether it is the suppliers, etc., contractors, small level contractors, cabling contractors. Finally, it's unless and until you have good money into this business, new engineers will not come into this business. And if you want good trained engineers, for example, you need to tell your engineers not just about your controllers or about your product, but you need to train them on HVAC, electrical, and networking to be a good BMS engineer. What is the point of having teaching your engineer about IOs and analog inputs and analog outputs and digital outputs and digital, if you don't tell him that the differential pressure sensor has to be at 2/3 the length of the duct, otherwise the whole VFD function dies. Kisko, this has to be put in, and that is where I think the money has to go in developing new engineers and ensuring the sustainability is meant, it runs through the automation industry. So yes, till that time, ये बड़ा problem है, जब तक ये solve नहीं होता, consultants will take a little bit of blame. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ashwin, for letting out your emotions. Yes. Yeah. So, Vaibhav, next question is to you. Now, this conventional BMS is slowly it is getting phased out, but still, customer and consultant he prefers to specify conventional products also, only because most of the time for price competence, okay, because though your product is technologically superior, but still he wants to have some price advantage for the customer, so that will come into comparison. How do you address this challenge?
Yes, so this is something which we face every day, right? The price is higher. नहीं quality नहीं चाहिए मगर एक साल में चला तो भी ठीक है. Let's go ahead, right? Because we have the price pressure. So honestly, at this point of time, we have to see what is right for the application, right? We can obviously have our sales, and there are different ways of getting the sales, right? You give 100% discount, the order book will be anyways filled, right? You have to make those choices, and you make a choice based on the trust that you need to develop. It's okay to let go a project. It's okay. Not every time you need to win a project. There is an application, and if your product meets that application, and when you talk to the client, invariably, I've seen DLF or Hirandan, they always talk about total cost of ownership. Please don't tell me CapEx, please tell me CapEx plus OpEx. Invariably, any OEM who has invested time and effort, I can write on behalf of that OEM, even if it can be my competitor, it's okay. The total cost of ownership for a technology is always cheaper. It's always a discussion between a CapEx and an OpEx. If you then, you have somebody, a purchasing smart guy, said, okay, let me dissect now the CapEx part of it, let me find the lowest, and then let me dissect the OpEx part of it, let me find it, you'll never get it. It's always the CapEx and the OpEx. And that's how the industry is looking at it, right? We want to spend money, and I'm not saying it's a price sensitive market. I'm still saying this in this forum. Provided you have the ability to explain to the consultant and the end user, it's never a price discussion. Because we have bright minds on the other side who understands what technology means and what is the key aspect or what is the cost I need to pay to get this technology. So if you have this approach, and it's again, I'm going back to the same thing. It's all about education, right? Once you start commoditizing the product, obviously you will not get a price in the market. When you create a differentiation, there's always somebody who's smarter than you, who wants to push this, who wants to show that value addition to the end user, he will always get a price, right?
Very well said, very well said. And finally, at the end of the movie, there is always a message, okay? And that message generally goes from the hero of the movie. So, Mr. Vikas, you have all the stakeholders on this podium. Do you have any specific concern or any view which you would like to share with others?
Yeah, I'm already confused whether I'm a hero or I'm a villain. Okay, on one corner I hear hero, on the other side I hear villain. So, but yeah, I mean, that's on the lighter side. Uh, well, I mean, since we talked about the prize, I would just like to, dwell upon that a little bit. For an SI also, I mean, it's always a big struggle, to make this whole journey or this exercise profitable. And there are many challenges on the way. Typically, the timelines getting delayed. And cutting corner is obviously not the answer, but how smartly SI is able to manage his manpower, because given the material cost, which is fixed typically at the, beginning of the project, what varies is largely the manpower cost. And for SI also, if you see, you require a lot of trained people at different levels, right at the design stage, then you require, a smart team on the site, then you require people who are going to, develop your graphics and work on the softwares, then you need another more brainy person to go onto the site and do the commissioning of that system. So all of that is quite an expensive thing, and one has to work out a good mix of how you make use of these resources. And yeah, so having said that, the journey of an SI is always filled of hurdles. And many things can be done to smoothen these hurdles, and I think a platform like INBAC can come really very handy. To spread more awareness among all the stakeholders. It's not just the key people at the stakeholders, but the entire team that is there. That there are many people from all sides who are actually present on the site, for example. So how educated everybody in that site about the BMS is extremely critical for a proper implementation of that project. So spreading awareness, providing more education on this specific industry. We often talk about the protocols and the open protocols. But we have even open protocols, there are too many of them, and finding a right mix of that, or finding the skill sets to be able to really make, marriages among all these protocols is so challenging, Just to give you an example, like we had, one case where, we had to take UPS on the BMS, and the protocol defined was Modbus. And at the last stage, the vendor said that, the OEM said that my small size UPS only come with SNMP protocol, and only the big ones will have Modbus. It's just not there, you can't provide. Now you encounter such difficulties at the last stage. Both are open protocols, but now you require different skill sets or different converters, like Mr. Balaji mentioned earlier, and then who pays for that converter? So you get stuck. So likewise, there are many things. So, spreading more awareness, can we make more and more use of a common or a single open protocol, to make everybody's life easy? These are the questions, that the industry needs to address. And I think a platform like INBAC also can help us a lot in that. So I'm glad that we have such a platform now in India. And it's really good that we all are coming on this platform together.
Thank you, Mr. Vikas. Actually, there are so many questions and there will be so many answers and so many emotion flows actually, but we are really short of time. And here I would like to end this panel discussion. I thank each and every participant. Thank you for, really thank you all for expressing all your views. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Thank you.